Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. Dynamite tonight was from the Agganis Arena in Boston, Massachusetts, and the show just ended, and I gotta say, Dynamite tonight was way better than last week's show. Last week's Dynamite was just a very mediocre show, but this week was an improvement over last week's show, but nothing newsworthy came out of this Dynamite. Nothing big happened. But tonight on Dynamite, we had a 8-man tag team match where it was FTR and the Acclaimed versus the Gunn Club and Swerve and Our Glory. We had the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament where it was Ethan Page versus Eddie Kingston. We had the TNT Championship on the line, Wardlow versus Ari Daivari. Jay Lethal ended up taking on Trent Berretta. Jamie Hayter ended up taking on Skye Blue. And in the main event, we had a 2 out of 3 falls match between BRYAN Danielson and SAMMY Guevara. But overall, Dynamite tonight, like I said, was a way better show than last week, but nothing newsworthy came out of the show tonight. We're still building to full gear, but we also had a face-to-face between Saraya and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. And of course, the predictable news, from Saraya, which I will get to in that promo, that segment. But let's jump right into the review. Dynamite opened up tonight with the 8-man tag team match. FTR and the Acclaimed versus Swerve and Our Glory and the Gunn Club. And this was a very fun 8-man tag. Really enjoyed this match. So we had the Gunn Club, Austin and Colton end up coming out. Of course, Austin and Colton are part of the group, The Firm, which I don't even care for. I don't care about The Firm. The only person that stands out in that entire group is Morrissey, is W. Morrissey. Out of everyone in that group. So The Firm, it's made up of a bunch of jobbers outside of W. Morrissey. So they end up coming out first, and then Swerve and Our Glory end up coming out. Swerve end up coming out first, and then Keith Lee made his way out. And then we had FTR, Dax Harwood, and Cash Wheeler. The top guys end up coming out next, and they got a big reaction from the Boston crowd. And then we had the Acclaimed come out after FTR. So the Acclaimed ended up making their way out. Max Caster, of course, did his rapping, where he ended up rapping about Tom Brady, Kyle Irvin, and Austin and Colton. And from out of nowhere, Billy Gunn runs down to the ring, and he ended up taking out Swerve in the ring. Of course, Swerve ended up injuring Billy's hand on Rampage, a couple weeks back. So, like I said, Billy Gunn ran down. He ran into the ring, started beating down Swerve, and we had FTR and the Acclaimed end up holding Billy Gunn back. So Billy Gunn end up going to the back. So Harwood and Colton Gunn start off the match. Colton ended up going to work on Dax, ended up hitting a standing drop kick. He tagged in Austin Gunn. Austin came in, delivered a right hand to Harwood, and the crowd, you just hear, was chanting "ass boys" to Colton and Austin. So Dax came back, delivered a shoulder block to Austin Gunn. So we had Dax end up delivering a chop to Colton, and Austin Gunn end up getting a shot from FTR and the Acclaimed. Austin Gunn ended up taking in Swerve. Swerve got into the ring. He quickly went at it at Cash Wheeler, delivering some blows to Wheeler. Wheeler countered with a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker to Swerve. So Max Caster ended up taking in. Swerve tagged in Keith Lee. So it was Caster and Keith Lee going at it. Both Caster and Keith Lee were circling each other. Caster delivered a super kick to Keith Lee, and we had all 8 men in the corner. We had FTR and the Acclaimed. They were given the 10 punches to Swerve in Our Glory and the Gun Club. So Keith Lee ended up throwing Max Caster off, and FTR ended up sending Bowens and Max Caster into Keith Lee, which they ended up sending Keith Lee out of the ring. And the Acclaimed ended up doing the scissors, "Oh, scissor me, daddy." And then Dynamite went to commercial. Then when Dynamite came back from the commercial, Swerve was in control of the match. He had Dax Harwood in a headlock. He ended up trying to go for a somersault clothesline, but Dax delivered a German suplex to Swerve. Austin Gunn ended up tagging in. Dax delivered a backdrop on Austin. Colton ended up tagging in, and he had missed a splash. And we had Dax end up tagging in Bowens. Bowens took out both Austin and Colton Gunn, and he delivered some elbows to Swerve's head. Bowens then did the famouser on Colton Gunn. So we had Austin Gunn end up pulling Caster off the apron. The Gun Club end up hitting the big rig, and all 8 men end up regrouping in their corners. At the end of the match, Dax delivered a huge suplex onto all the men outside of the ring, and we had Keith Lee end up catching Bowens, and Bowens delivered a Hurricanrana into a powerbomb, and he ended up taking out Caster and Bowens. We had a point in the match which was, in my opinion, my favorite spot in the match was Swerve was on the top turnbuckle, and he ended up doing a tornillo off the turnbuckle and took out the Guns and the Acclaimed on the outside. Like I said, my favorite spot in the match there with Swerve doing that. That was such an awesome move. Then we had Dax Harwood. He was on the top turnbuckle, and he delivered a huge superplex onto all the other guys on the outside. And Dax took the brunt of that superplex from the top. So Dax Harwood ended up getting Austin Gunn in the ring. Austin came back, started delivering some jabs to Harwood. Harwood ended up taking Austin Gunn out, and he locked in the sharpshooter, and Colton Gunn ended up breaking up the sharpshooter. Bowens ended up coming in, and he claimed did the mic drop onto Austin Gunn. And then FTR delivered the big rig. And there you go. FTR and the Acclaimed end up winning this 8-man tag. Post-match, we had FTR and the Acclaimed. They end up raising their belts. And pretty much that was basically that. But overall, this was a very fun 8-man tag. Really enjoyed it. And all these guys gave it all they got in the match. I said, love that spot where Swerve did that tornillo off the top turnbuckle, taking out the Guns and the Acclaimed. Just absolutely great. It was. And then we had MJF. MJF had his interview on Pardon My Take. And they ended up cutting to a video of that interview with MJF. And this was awesome. This was very good by MJF. So MJF ended up saying that he is worried about Full Gear and how people don't understand why it's the most important in wrestling. He ended up saying that it could be the crown of a new face of a generation. He ended up naming, all these legends: Ric Flair, The Rock, John Cena, Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, Stone Cold Steve Austin. He ended up saying that's who he is. That's who MJF is. He ended up saying that all he has to do to etch his name into history and have a long, fruitful reign. So MJF ended up saying that he thinks Moxley is a scumbag piece of shit from the slums, but he respects him. So MJF respects Moxley. So MJF ended up calling Moxley unathletic, but he ended up saying that he respects all his sacrifices. He ended up saying that he is the best wrestler on God's green earth. MJF ended up saying that it ends at Full Gear because he is the guy who can do everything from TV, movies, talk shows. He ended up saying that he could bring pro wrestling back to where people can talk about it again. He ended up saying that he's sick of waiting his turn. So MJF ended up talking about his first match being against a neck tattoo. So he referenced Cody Rhodes there. Cody Rhodes, of course, with his neck tattoo. He ended up talking about Matt's fall on pay-per-view and how his return was marred by a press conference. MJF ended up saying that he is grabbing the spotlight, and come Full Gear, the devil gets his due. So that was what MJF had to say in that interview on Pardon My Take. Very good interview with MJF. Just really liked it. Whenever you hear MJF do an interview or cut a promo, you just have to listen to what the guy has to say. But this was very good. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, we saw Stokely Hathaway. Stokely Hathaway ended up talking about how him and MJF used to see eye to eye, and how now MJF is just dick riding Jon Moxley. Stokely ended up saying that he doesn't need his best friend anymore. He doesn't need MJF. So Stokely was like, "See you in hell, Max." So that was what Stokely Hathaway had to say. And then we had Ethan Page versus Eddie Kingston. AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament match. And I'm going to post the bracket here for the World Title Eliminator Tournament. So this is the bracket, what it looks like. So it's the bracket for the World Title Eliminator Tournament. Of course, on the left you see Eddie Kingston versus Ethan Page, which we saw tonight, which I'm going to tell you who won the match. And then Friday on Rampage, we're going to have Bandito versus Roosh, which should be a very good match there. I have to say that Roosh is probably going to win it. I mean, Bandito just signed a contract with AEW, and Bandito received an offer from WWE, and he was considering both, but he was leaning towards signing more with AEW, so he signed the contract. But that should be a good match, Bandito versus Roosh on Rampage. And then on the right you see Lance Archer versus Ricky Starks. That should be a good match there, very enjoyable match. I think Ricky Starks is going to come out, win, even though Lance Archer, he is, very entertaining. And Brian Cage versus Dante Martin. This looks like it'll probably be just an okay match. But coming out of it, I'm going to have to see Brian Cage winning the match. And then we're going to get a one-on-one at Full Gear. And the winner of that match at Full Gear, the final match at Full Gear in the Eliminator tournament, will receive a World Championship match on Dynamite at Winter is Coming. So that's the other bracket there for the World Title Eliminator tournament. So that's the bracket for the tournament. Back to Ethan Page versus Eddie Kingston. This was a good match here. So we had Ethan Page end up coming out. And then Eddie Kingston came out accompanied by Ortiz. So it was great to see Eddie Kingston. And the winner gets a shot at either Jon Moxley or MJF at Winter is Coming, whoever is the AEW World Champion. So the match ended up starting. Both Page and Kingston ended up locking up. And we had Kingston was in control of the match. He locked in a headlock on Page. Page ended up fighting him off. Kingston delivered a couple of chops to Page. Page ended up cutting Kingston off with a shoulder block. Kingston ended up rolling out, and Page ended up flying off the apron with a shoulder block. So Page ended up coming back. He delivered some slaps and some stomps to Kingston on the outside. So both men got into the ring. Page ended up delivering a double underhook suplex to Eddie Kingston. He ended up going for the cover, to which Kingston kicked out at 2. So Page ended up whipping Kingston into the corner. He followed up with a nasty suplex on the floor to Kingston. And as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Eddie Kingston delivered a suplex to Page. He ended up going for the cover, and Page ended up kicking out at 2. Stokely Hathaway was also out there because Stokely Hathaway accompanied Ethan Page out there. So both Page and Kingston were on their knees, throwing punches. So both guys ended up getting up to their feet, and they just kept hitting each other. Eddie delivered a chop to Page. So at the end of the match, we had Ethan Page ended up sending Eddie Kingston into the post. Ethan Page ended up getting up to the top, and he raised Eddie Kingston up, and he ended up hitting a huge Eagle's Edge from the top, which was awesome. Great spot there. And so Page ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Ethan Page ended up winning the match. He is moving on in the tournament, which this was a surprise because I thought, watching the match, Eddie Kingston's going to beat Ethan Page. Kingston, deserves the win. But shockingly, Ethan Page ended up coming out with the win, which I did not expect. But this was a very good match here. Very entertaining by Page and Eddie Kingston. Always good to see Eddie Kingston there and seeing the crowd behind him chanting his name, chanting Eddie, Eddie. But really enjoyed the match. And then we have Renee Paquette. Renee Paquette was backstage with Roosh and the Dark Order. Jose ended up telling Alan 10 Angels that Roosh is going to win. And when Roosh becomes champion, Alan 10 Angels will get the first title shot. So Roosh ended up saying that he doesn't give second opportunities. So pretty much, basically, that was that. And then we had Ari Daivari. Ari Daivari was in the ring. He was with his butler. The butler had $100 in his hands. So Ari Daivari ended up offering his own butler for the TNT Championship, which enrages Wardlow. Wardlow ended up coming out, and Samoa Joe was right there, so Samoa Joe ended up coming out along with Wardlow. And so then we had the match. Wardlow versus Ari Daivari, TNT Championship on the line. This was a squash match. Wardlow ended up winning the match, retaining the TNT Championship. Is it just me, or is Wardlow being booked every single week in squash matches? The TNT Championship has been booked like shit. This is terrible. Wardlow is just being booked in squash matches. This guy deserves better. This guy deserves competition, not having to go out there every single week and get squash matches. This whole thing with the TNT Championship being booked like this is absolutely terrible. Wardlow being booked like this is terrible. The guy needs some competition. Stop feeding him jobber after jobber after jobber, or squash match after squash match after squash match. So post-match, Wardlow got on the mic and he called out Powerhouse Hobbs. So Hobbs ended up coming out. He ended up saying, "Oh, we do this on my time." So Wardlow ended up saying that he has finally a suitable opponent. So even Wardlow even says that he has a suitable opponent. Even he is tired of Tony Khan basically booking him in squash matches. So Wardlow ended up saying that he's going to keep the TNT Championship and take every championship in the company. Then Samoa Joe ended up hitting Wardlow from behind with the Ring of Honor Television Championship. Joe then locked in the Coquina Clutch on Wardlow. He put Wardlow to sleep. And we saw our Powerhouse Hobbs. He was just laughing on the stage. So Joe ended up staring at Wardlow. He whispered something to Wardlow. And then we see Hobbs end up screaming out, "I'll get you too," at Samoa Joe. So pretty much that was basically that. That was how the segment ended. But I saw that coming from Samoa Joe, when he attacked Wardlow with the title. And is this going to lead to a triple threat match where it's going to be Wardlow versus Samoa Joe versus Powerhouse Hobbs? We'll see. But I know that it's probably going to lead to that. It's probably going to be a triple threat match. And the TNT Championship is going to be on the line. But the TNT Championship and Wardlow, they need to be booked better. Because with them booking the TNT Championship like this is absolutely terrible. Even Wardlow, even them booking Wardlow is just terrible. And then we saw Renee Paquette. Renee Paquette was backstage with Jade Cargill and Kiera Hogan and Layla Gray. And it was announced that Full Gear, it's going to be Nyla Rose versus Jade for the TBS Championship. So we had Cargill end up saying that if Nyla Rose will be there on Friday for AEW Rampage. And then she will handle her ass then. And then pretty much that was basically that. So it's going to be Nyla Rose versus Jade Cargill at Full Gear for the TBS Championship. Who cares? Who cares? Yeah, so exciting. Like, I'm so excited to see this match at Full Gear. No, it is not exciting. And then we saw Tony Schiavone. Tony Schiavone was in the ring, and he ended up introducing his very good friend, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. This was a face-off between Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and Saraya. So the doctor ended up coming out to the ring, and then Tony Schiavone ended up introducing Saraya. Saraya ended up coming out to a pop from the Boston crowd. Tony Schiavone was in the middle with Dr. Britt Baker and Saraya. And Saraya started off this face-off. So Saraya ended up saying she knows fans will be wondering if she can wrestle or not. She ended up saying that a few weeks ago, she took scans and tests. And unfortunately for Britt, Saraya ended up saying that she is 100% cleared. So Saraya is now cleared to compete in the ring. So the crowd went crazy when Saraya delivered that news. Obviously, predictable. But Saraya ended up saying AEW is her house. We all knew that Saraya was going to be cleared. So Britt Baker ended up saying that if there's anyone more fickle than AEW fan, she ended up asking if Saraya even knows how to do this anymore. And Baker ended up questioning why Saraya has been going after her. Baker ended up saying that she built AEW from the ground up until it became a fortress, so that superstars like her wanted to move in. And Baker ended up saying that she is proud of that. Baker ended up saying that the pride turns into resentment quickly when Saraya ended up skipping in and ended up calling it her house. So Baker ended up saying that she doesn't recall her laying a single brick. Doesn't recall Saraya laying a single brick. So Baker ended up saying that she is everything Saraya wishes she could have been. She then reminded Saraya that she left her house and walked into hers, and that they don't take walk-ins. So Baker ended up saying that Saraya needs to make an appointment. So Saraya ended up saying it is cute, and she ended up putting herself on a pedestal, and that she was given a spot by Tony Khan and got fed QT's trainees. She ended up saying that Baker doesn't know what it takes to be a star, and that she traveled around the UK and Europe for free because she loves this business. Saraya ended up saying that she was hit by a car and wrestled the same day because she loves this business. She ended up saying that she was starring revolutions before they were a trend, or wrestling was a twinkle in Britt Baker's eye. Saraya ended up saying that she has done MSG. She's done the O2 and also the Tokyo Dome. And she ended up saying now she's in front of an ungrateful bitch, Britt Baker. So Saraya ended up saying that she has been humiliated in front of people. She dealt with drug issues publicity and gave her neck for this business. She ended up saying, yet Britt Baker doesn't know what it takes to make it. Saraya then ended up saying that this is her comeback story and the biggest match of Britt Baker's career. So Saraya ended up announcing that she will face Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, at Full Gear. Obviously, we all knew it was going to head this way. So Britt Baker then ended up going to attack Saraya. Saraya ended up reversing, and she ended up dropping Britt Baker face first onto the mat. And that was basically how this segment ended. But overall, this was a very good segment. Really enjoyed this. Saraya, get on the mic saying that she is 100% cleared. We obviously knew this was going to happen. And also, we obviously all knew that Saraya was going to get her hands on Britt Baker at Full Gear in a match. So, should be a very entertaining match at Full Gear. And it's going to be good to see Saraya back in the ring, wrestling in the match. So, will Saraya show any signs of ring rust in the match at Full Gear? Maybe. So, maybe she won't have ring rust. So, we just got to wait and see. But, going to be glad to see Saraya in the ring again in a match. And then we saw Lexi Nair. Lexi Nair was backstage with Sanjay Dutt, Satnam Singh, Jay Lethal, and The Factory. So pretty much Sanjay Dutt was thanking QT Marshall and his guys in The Factory. And Sanjay Dutt ended up giving money for it. So Danhausen ended up appearing with the best friends. Chuck Taylor, Trent Berretta, and Orange Cassidy was there. Danhausen ended up taking a shot at QT Marshall and his guys for wearing hats. QT Marshall ended up suggesting that Orange Cassidy defend his All-Atlantic Championship Friday on Rampage against Lee Johnson. And Orange Cassidy ended up accepting the challenge. So we're going to be seeing that Friday on Rampage. Obviously, Orange Cassidy is going to retain the All-Atlantic Championship on Rampage. So then Trent Berretta ended up calling Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh scumbags. And then they arranged a match between Jay Lethal and Trent Berretta, to which that was the match that was next. So it was Trent Berretta versus Jay Lethal. And this was an okay match, not great or perfect by any means. Trent Berretta ended up making his way out, and as Trent tried to make his way down to the ring, Jay Lethal ended up appearing, and Lethal ended up attacking Trent from behind. He ended up attacking Trent's knee. So Jay Lethal ended up throwing Trent Berretta knee first over the ring steps. Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh end up making their way down to the ring. Jay Lethal then ended up sending Trent into the ring, and the match got underway. Jay Lethal delivered some chops to Trent, and he ended up working on Trent's knee. Jay Lethal ended up attempting a top rope maneuver, but Trent ended up countering. Trent started firing some shots on Jay Lethal, but Jay Lethal ended up taking out Trent's knee, and Jay Lethal ended up hitting a knee breaker dragon screw combo. Danhausen and Chuck Taylor ended up making their way down. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Jay Lethal was in control of the match. He was up top. He ended up going to go for an elbow to Trent, but Trent ended up getting his knees up. So Trent delivered a huge German suplex to Jay Lethal, and then Trent followed up with a half-and-half suplex. Trent then delivered a clothesline to Jay Lethal in the corner. Jay Lethal ended up countering a DDT from Trent. So later on, we had Sanjay Dutt get on the apron because Trent was setting up for the Storm Zero. Sanjay Dutt got on the apron. Danhausen was also up on the apron, and he cursed Sanjay, but Satnam ended up laying out Danhausen. Jay Lethal then delivered a kick to Trent, and then Jay Lethal went for the lethal injection on Trent. He ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Jay Lethal ended up winning the match. Post-match, Tony Schiavone was on the ramp, and he was interviewing Sanjay Dutt and Jay Lethal. Sanjay Dutt ended up telling Tony Schiavone to shut up and sit down. Sanjay ended up saying that he delivered his promise last week, and he ended up introducing JEFF, JARRETT. So Jeff Jarrett ended up coming out, and Jarrett got on the mic. He ended up saying, after 1 million views of his debut, the question is, why? So we got explanation as to why Jeff Jarrett has aligned himself with Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh. Jeff Jarrett ended up saying that when a friend calls, a friend shows up. Jarrett ended up saying that he showed up to help and that they started their plan last week. Jarrett ended up talking about the history between Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and himself, because they were in Global Force Wrestling, which Jeff Jarrett was behind. So Jarrett then ended up praising Satnam Singh, and he was like, oh, take a good look at this guy. So they went from Satnam Singh's shoes all the way up. You know, they did a whole camera pan up on him. And I'm like, oh, they take notes of when they do it for Omos? You know, where the camera's like that, like Omos, where they got to get a good view of how tall he is. And I'm like, that's what they did here for Satnam. Only it was different, where they end up having the camera go down from his feet all the way up. So Jarrett ended up praising Satnam for being a legitimate giant. And he ended up calling out fake giants in red skinny jeans, to which he was taking a jab at Braun Strowman. Because he was like, fake giants being in red skinny jeans, and also ran by the banana nose circle. So not only did Jeff Jarrett take a jab at Braun Strowman, the whole ran by the banana nose circle is Jarrett taking a shot at Triple H. And you can tell right there, possibly Jeff Jarrett is pissed because he got replaced by Road Dogg. So that's probably Jeff Jarrett's anger at Triple H there. So Jarrett ended up praising Satnam's NBA accomplishment for being the only Indian player. So he ended up talking about putting people in body bags. And he ended up cussing out a guy that was saying, oh, we need to wrap this up. You know, we got time. We got the show to move on. So Jarrett was like, shut up to that guy. So he chased that guy down with the guitar, and Sanjay Dutt ended up stopping Jarrett, and then Jarrett's music ended up hitting, and pretty much that was basically that. So at least we got some explanation as to why Jarrett has aligned himself with Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt and Satnam Singh. So, but once again, you know, taking jabs at WWE when he ended up calling out fake giants in red skinny jeans, a nod to Braun Strowman, and ran by the banana nose circle, taking a jab at Triple H there. And then we saw Renee Paquette. Renee Paquette was in the back with Jungle Boy. Renee ended up asking Jungle Boy about him and Luchasaurus. Jungle Boy ended up saying to Renee that Christian and Luchasaurus don't decide when it's over. And what happened last week was just the beginning. So Jungle Boy ended up saying that he will challenge them face to face on Rampage on Friday. So pretty much, you know, that was basically that. You know, Jungle Boy challenging Christian Cage and Luchasaurus. And then we had Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley ended up making his way out from the crowd. He was accompanied by William Regal. So Jon Moxley got on the mic. He ended up saying, "Sir William Regal, how old was I when we met? 25, 26? He ended up saying, "I was young, full of piss and vinegar, and no arthritis yet." He ended up saying, "I thought I figured it out. I ran my mouth. I wanted to be feared and respected like you." So Moxley ended up saying, "So to get to that, I picked a fight with you, and it didn't go well." Moxley ended up saying that you tortured me, kicked the hell out of me, and it pissed me off. He ended up saying that it drove me to work harder, grow, and evolve. Moxley ended up saying that when I had a shot, I knocked you out with a knee. I ripped your ear near off. And you finally said, now the real work begins. Moxley ended up saying that it reminds him of MJF. So Moxley ended up saying, what's different this time? Who is MJF? We know the rich, fake JCPenney clothing guy, so Moxley promoting JCPenney there. Guess he loves to shop at JCPenney. So he ended up saying that he talks the talk of a big-time champ. But I actually am a multi-millionaire, a multi-champ. So he ended up saying, he calls himself a pillar without never having weight. He ended up laughing at MJF calling himself the devil. He ended up saying, I have seen the devil. I have met him and looked in his eyes. I've been in bad places, seen people do bad things. He ended up saying, you are not that at all. I want you to fulfill your potential. When you step into the ring in your hometown at Full Gear, everything you've done has been easy, not this. So that was what Moxley had to say. That was how the segment ended. But very good promo from Moxley here. Hype for their match at Full Gear. Him and MJF. But very good promo. And then we had Jamie Hayter versus Skye Blue. This match was just very meh, in my opinion. It was predictable in the outcome. Jamie Hayter ended up making her way down to the ring. She was accompanied by Rebel and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. And then Skye Blue ended up making her way down, and Toni Storm's music ended up hitting. So Toni Storm accompanied Skye Blue. So the match got underway. Skye Blue and Jamie Hayter end up starting off. Jamie Hayter end up rolling out of the ring. Hayter end up following up with a whip to Skye Blue into the rail. She ended up trying to go for a power slam. Skye Blue ended up countering, ended up sending Jamie Hayter into the ring post. So Skye Blue delivered an arm drag to Jamie Hayter and then delivered a knee strike. Britt Baker got involved. She ended up grabbing Skye Blue's boot, and Jamie Hayter ended up delivering a kick to Skye Blue and then delivered a T-bone suplex. And then as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Skye Blue was in control of the match. She fired off some forearm strikes to Jamie Hayter. She ended up following up with a front drop kick. Skye Blue ended up taking out both Rebel and Britt Baker at ringside. And she ended up hitting the crossbody on Jamie Hayter. She ended up going for the cover. Hayter ended up kicking out too. So at the end of the match, we had Jamie Hayter end up hitting Skye Blue with a lariat. She ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Jamie Hayter ended up winning the match. Overall, very meh match this was. Predictable in the outcome. We all knew that Jamie Hayter was going to win the match. So then we had Brian Cage and Dante Martin. Their match Friday on Rampage, where Cage ended up hyping up his size. Dante Martin ended up saying that the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And Brian Cage was like, I am not a man. I am a machine. So we're going to be seeing their match Friday on Rampage in the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament. So then after that, we saw Alex Marvez. Alex Marvez was backstage, and Lance Archer was there, and Lance Archer ended up destroying Ricky Starks. And he ended up saying that everybody dies. So Ricky Starks was laid out. Marvez ended up calling for help. And pretty much that was basically that. But we're going to be seeing Lance Archer versus Ricky Starks Friday on Rampage in the AEW World Championship Eliminator Tournament. Main event. Sammy Guevara versus Bryan Danielson. 2 out of 3 falls match. This was a very good match here. Sammy Guevara ended up making his way out, accompanied by his wife, Ty Mello Yellow. And of course, both of them end up smooching. Cringe. So next up, Bryan ended up coming out. And he was accompanied by William Regal. So the crowd ended up popping for Bryan. So the match started. Bryan immediately delivered some chops on Guevara. He ended up following up with some uppercuts and some kicks. Bryan delivered another vicious chop to Guevara, which he sent Guevara into another corner. So Bryan was just delivering some more chops and some strikes. And he ended up sending Sammy into another turnbuckle. Sammy and Bryan ended up reversing a bunch of whips. Sammy then delivered a drop kick to Bryan. Bryan blocked the tope, and he ended up hitting a shotgun drop kick to Guevara. Guevara was on the outside, and Bryan ended up going to fly out at Guevara, but Ty Mello ended up getting in the way. So Bryan was on the outside, and Guevara ended up throwing a chair at Bryan's face. So that caused a DQ, a disqualification. So Bryan won the first fall because of that. Sammy then ended up jamming the mic into Bryan's eye. He started taunting the crowd, and he ended up elbowing Bryan in the face. And Dynamite went to commercial. And as Dynamite came back from the commercial, Guevara was in control of the match. He was taunting Bryan in the corner. And he was throwing elbows and punches at Bryan. Bryan was busted open above his eye. I think it was his left eye. Bryan ended up trying to fight back, but Guevara didn't let him go. Bryan tried to do a strike at Guevara, but Guevara delivered a knee to Bryan, and then Guevara hit the GTH, and Guevara ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Guevara ended up winning the second fall. So we had Bryce Remsburg. He checked on Bryan. Sammy ended up going after Bryan immediately. Started delivering some uppercuts and some chops to Bryan. Guevara was up on top of Bryan, and Guevara ended up flipping out. Guevara ended up trying to leap up. He ended up slipping on the ropes. Bryan then delivered a headbutt on Guevara, and he followed up with a diving headbutt. Sammy avoided that, and he locked in the label lock on Bryan. Bryan struggled to get to the ropes, and he tried to roll through. Guevara ended up keeping the label lock on. So Bryan got to his feet, and he literally carried Guevara, but it was too much, so Bryan was down again. Bryan was also bleeding from his nose, so Bryan looked like he had a broken nose there. So Bryan managed to get to the ropes, and he broke the label lock. Guevara delivered some chops and elbows to Bryan, but Bryan came back. He delivered some chops and elbows to Guevara, and he ended up delivering a series of headbutts. Bryan countered Guevara with a huge flying knee as he was coming off the top, so both men were down. As Dynamite came back from the commercial, Bryce Rumsberg ejected Ty Mello from ringside because Ty ended up grabbing Bryce during a pinfall attempt. So Bryce did the right call and ejected Ty Mello. So Bryan and Sammy were slugging it out. Bryan was bleeding a whole lot more now. Guevara then poked Bryan's eyes, but Bryan ended up countering with a suplex into the corner. Guevara was in the tree of woe, so Bryan then delivered some kicks, and he followed up with a delayed baseball slide drop kick. Bryan had Guevara up on top, and he was trying to elbow Guevara, but Guevara countered with a flying knee. Later on, Bryan ended up hitting the Busaku knee to Guevara, but Guevara ended up holding on. Guevara ended up hitting the Lion Tamer on Bryan. So we had Bryan end up hitting the Busaku knee again. And at the end of the match, we had Bryan deliver some elbows to Sammy's jaw, and he locked into the bell lock. And Sammy ended up passing out. So there you go. Bryan ended up winning the match. And that was how Dynamite went off the air tonight. Overall, this was a very good main event. Good 2 out of 3 falls match. Bryan just bleeding profusely from his left eye, the top of his left eye, to him maybe having a broken nose because it was bleeding. So it was a crazy match. But Dynamite tonight, was way better than last week's Dynamite. But nothing newsworthy coming out of this Dynamite. And if you say Saraya announcing that she is 100% cleared, that is not newsworthy because we all knew that she was going to be cleared soon. But anyways, that's it for the Dynamite review. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. There will be no SmackDown or AEW Rampage review this Friday. I'll be busy this Friday, so won't be able to do a review of SmackDown Rampage. But till then, see you all later.